Now, today, the Justice Department announced that an alleged plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the United States with help from a purported member of a Mexican drug cartel had been foiled, calling it an international murder-for-hire scheme. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder said that the two accused are agents of the Iranian government and that the U.S. would hold Iran accountable. And in fact, the White House, State Department, and Treasury Department are all involved in developing new measures against the Iranian government, although they haven't specified what those may be. The two men are Mansour Arabsiar, 56-year-old U.S. citizen who also holds an Iranian passport, and Gholam Shakuri, who authorities say is a Quds Force member. Now, Holder said that a sting operation began in May. The president was informed of it in June of this year, and that the Mexican government had aided in the months-long investigation. FBI Director Robert Mueller said that this case illustrates that we live in a world where borders and boundaries are increasingly irrelevant. But is that really the case? And how long before we start hearing the bomb Iran crowd chime in here? Joining me to discuss it is Jack Rice, former CIA officer and criminal defense attorney. Jack, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm just wondering what your initial reaction was when you heard the story, because Robert Mueller, the FBI director, said that it reads like a Hollywood script. And if you think about it, it really does. You have the Iranians working with the Mexican drug cartels to carry out, a bomb plot here on U.S. soil that has to do with their mortal enemy, the Saudi Arabians. You couldn't make this stuff up.
Yeah, it's very convoluted. And frankly, I'm concerned about this. I mean, for obvious reasons. You can go back, and the Iranians have had long-standing connections with terrorist organizations around the world. And we absolutely have established that. And so that's one reason we have to be careful on this. And yet, at the same time, this does sound very almost like movie plot-like. And we have to sit down and consider, maybe it wasn't the Iranians. There's always false flag operations that can be actually conducted by other countries who are out there who may have wanted to blame the Iranians right now. So that may be one of the issues. I just think we need to be very, very careful here.
Well, you know, clearly the details are still coming out on this because they just broke this news a couple of hours ago today, and I think that we're going to find out more as it goes along. It could very well be real, and it could be great that they just foiled the terrorist plot. But if you think about Iran and what their possible intentions might be, why would they want to carry out an attack on U.S. soil?
Well, the logic seems to be this, and this is what we're really hearing out of the Attorney General's office, out of the Bureau, is that there's a long-standing animosity between the Iranians on one side and the Saudis on the other. And I think the logic behind this is, with so many others being toppled in the Middle East, of course we can talk about Libya, we can talk about Egypt, that potentially the idea, if the Saudi ambassador to the United States were assassinated, then somehow this might cause instability in Saudi Arabia. That seems to be the argument. But the problem with that logic is that it still doesn't really establish how this benefits Iran. You see, that's the only problem. All of these arguments don't really track with what we've seen. The Iranians have been more than willing to commit various operations around the world, and they've absolutely done this. But every time they have done this, they have been very calculated and very cold about this, but very calculated in terms of why they were doing it, and it was for an absolute Iranian benefit. At this point, I'm having a hard time finding that absolute benefit that I've seen in past operations.
Now, could you even argue that this might be detrimental for Iran? Because on one side, you could say that the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia since the Arab Spring has happened has been deteriorating somewhat. And so now this might bring the two closer together again.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. You can go at the former National Security Advisor who came out just a couple of weeks ago to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and talked about how our willingness to drop our support for the President Mubarak of Egypt, that somehow this has made this much more difficult for the Americans in the region with all of the rest of our friends, including the Saudi Arabians. And that makes it sort of interesting when you turn around and you look at Iran's involvement. This could actually make this harder for Iran, not easier for Iran, because now all of a sudden what you have is the closing of the ranks between the Americans and the Saudis, and to some degree even the, dare I say this, the Israelis, because now all of a sudden you see the Iranians as the devil, as the absolute infidel, if you will, if you're a Sunni Arab anyway, and that these people deserve to be hit. You see, that's the fear. The chatter that I'm hearing around the world right now is that what the Iranians are concerned about, and what others are also concerned about, is a potential strike by the Israelis. And that seems to be one of the things that's out there. I'm not saying that they're necessarily connected, but I am saying that there are people out there wondering if there is a connection.
Well, now what we're hearing for now is that the State Department, the Justice Department, the Treasury Department, the White House, they're all coming up with some type of response to Iran, right? Attorney General Eric Holder said that today. We have no idea. But how long do you think it's going to take for the bomb Iran war hawks that we know so well, the Lindsey Grahams, John McCains, the John Boltons, the Bill Kristols of the world, to come out and say we have to bomb Iran right now? We've seen John Bolton say it before last time when he said that Israel only had 8 days to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back to conversations I've had with Ambassador Bolton about this, and I remember him telling me the same thing, that what it is that the Israelis needed to do or the Americans needed to do was to either replace the leadership of Iran or bomb them. So I'm not shocked that you're going to see a whole series of groups out there now saying now it's time to take out the Iranians. Again, taking me back to this question of, well, who would do that but the Israelis? And so that is a real concern now. And I think what's really important is that what the Bureau needs to do, what Justice Department really needs to do, is if these guys in fact are responsible, and I think about this as a criminal defense attorney, then fine, prosecute them. But don't prosecute them in some sort of strange kangaroo court that you drop these guys in Guantanamo. I'm talking about prosecuting them in federal courts where you sit down and you have federal rules of evidence and you actually prove that these guys did this, rather than some strange masquerade where we say, well, we know they did it. If we're the best country in the world, if we're the strongest judicial system in the world, then let's stand up and prove it. So I'd like to see that happen. We'll see if it actually does.
Well, so far it does look like it's going that way, and they are being charged in a federal court. Now, lastly, as happy as we all can be if indeed this plot was foiled, I just want to read you a statement here that comes from this was from Preet Bharara, sorry. He's the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan. And he said, "We will not let other countries use our soil as their battleground." Is that just a little hypocritical for us to say?
No, we like to use other people's soil for our battleground.
I mean, you know, sometimes in some of these responses, clearly I understand that the authorities there or that the attorneys have to take a strong stance and that they have to make a point clear, but sometimes maybe just don't say things when everyone else can point a finger and say you do the same thing. But, you know, we're going to keep following this story and see what other details do come out. In the meantime, Jack, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.